So when a brand says a product is made for Afro-textured hair, what proof should we expect? A nice label, clean beauty claims, natural ingredients. We need better. We need actual proof. I'm sure you can relate to the fact that many Black women and men have spent years buying products that promised moisture, strength, curl definition, scalp comfort, and healthier hair, only to find out the product was not really tested on hair or skin like theirs. You're tuned into your go-to podcast on all things natural hair, Unraveling the Knots. My name is Ganiat Salami, and I'm your host with the most. I'm a beautypreneur project manager, and I really love natural hair. By natural, I mean coily and curly hair. And I'm actually so glad we get to go on this curly adventure together, guys. Over 90 episodes and counting. You guys have stuck with us. Shout out to the OG listeners and our returning listeners. Thank you so much. And to our brand new listeners, thank you for stopping by. I'm sending you like a major virtual hug right now. We hope you enjoy your time with us today. And when you're done listening, do check out our past episodes. Trust, there is something special for everyone. Unraveling the Knots is a blend of research, personal experience, and my unique take on doing hair better. Of course, our episodes are also inspired by your feedback, requests, and your suggestions. So please keep them coming. Send us a mail to, we actually got an upgrade with our email. Our email is now hello@unravelingtheknots.com. That is HELLO@UNRAVELING the KNOTS.com. Or just simply send us a DM on Instagram at UTK Podcast. So coming to the matter of today. Today, we are speaking with Nathan Puksta, founder and CEO of Filament Sciences. Nathan has nearly 20 years of experience in global beauty, including executive roles at L'Oreal, leadership positions across Kills and Baxter of California. And I need to tell you guys this. He's actually training as both a stylist and esthetician. That means our brother here has seen beauty from the corporate side, the product side, and the client chair. And you know, we keep it real on the UTK podcast. We're not only talking about business claims here. We're talking about real hair receipts. I mean, real texture, real trust, real evidence. So today, I want us to have a clear and honest conversation about why Afro-textured hair deserves better research, stronger testing, and more transparent claims. Nathan, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here. I absolutely love this podcast. I love the truths that you uncover, the subjects that you cover. It is near and dear to my heart, and it is not talked about enough. So thank you.
Oh my goodness, that is such a wonderful compliment. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course.
And of course, we want to learn more about you. But, you know, before we go into all this talk about clinical proof and product claims, I want to start with something personal. So tell us more about yourself. And we obviously focus on Afro-textured hair matters here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but your hair is not looking anything close to 3B or 4C.
No.
But I still want to know, what has your hair journey been like? And what does hair mean to you personally as a guy?
Thank you. That's a good question. So my hair journey has been full of ups and downs. It has been full of trials and tribulations, misfires, bad ideas, thinking that I should go bright purple or bright blue, bad ideas of perming my hair, all different kinds. I have been very experimental with my hair. I am not the traditional kind of male identifying figure that has the average short hair that keeps it cropped and keeps it easy. And so, when I was a kid, I started swimming competitively. And in swimming competitively, obviously I was exposed to tons of chlorine, tons of damage, salts, ocean swimming, sun, chlorine, copper, metals, calciums. Yeah, all of that in my hair. And of course, I never wanted to wear a swim cap while I was swimming. So I had sun bleached hair from outdoor swimming competitively that then would turn green because it was exposed to chlorine. When I was younger, I wouldn't really take care of my hair because I didn't really care. Like as a guy, it wasn't cool to care about your hair or, use certain products, particularly in the 80s and 90s when I grew up. I'm aging myself. I'm 41. So I started to finally like care about my hair and what I put on it and the health of it, because it was effectively so damaged and fried all the time that then began my obsession with science behind hair, what works clinically on it, how I could reverse damage, how I could protect against it, which then kind of led me down this rabbit hole of like, how can I start doing hair and playing with hair, repairing hair, coloring hair, all those kinds of things. And I've always been a very creative person. So I feel like I've done it all with my hair. I've had it, like I said, I've had it short, I've had it long, I've permed it, I've straightened it. It's kind of like a canvas for my expression, I guess.
Yes, my goodness. When you were speaking, I just was thinking to myself, I thought that was bad. Nothing close to your own experience when it comes to experimenting on hair. But I have to say, your hair looks gorgeous.
Thank you. Well, I happen to own a clinically backed hair research company that makes products that actually work, knock on wood. So I do appreciate that. But with men too, there's also the beard equation. So it's not just like the hair on your head. It's like the cultural association that you have with beard, the masculinity and psychology of having a beard, maintaining it. I have a very kind of prominent or thick beard. I guess I was blessed in genetics in that way, but that's a whole other stream of consciousness and care that it takes to do that. So yeah, hair for men is not always as easy, I think, as it may seem.
Yes, I completely agree. And interestingly, I had a guest a few weeks back and he kind of alluded to the same thing. So he actually grows out his hair and he has coily hair. And essentially, it's like if you try to grow your hair longer, there are these negative stereotypes or these problematic perceptions that people basically push towards you,
Yeah. It's true. It's very true.
And I mean, I love to ask that question. I love to understand people's hair experiences. I think it's a great way to better understand people, essentially, because on this podcast, we're not just about things that are cosmetic. Talking about your hair sometimes gives people like more depth into who you are. And of course, it can affect how we see ourselves when we think about hair and how we also move in the world. So you have worked in corporate beauty, styling, and aesthetics. What first drew you into the beauty industry?
Well, I'm kind of like an emotional guy. I'm kind of like a romantic at heart. And I feel like beauty and particularly hair is very emotional. It's very personal for a lot of women and men. It is an expression of who they are, how they're feeling, their cultural identity, in some instances, their religious identity. And growing up in different cultures around the world, like I am Italian by blood, but I grew up in Japan. I've lived in India. I've lived in the Middle East. I have seen what hair, the expression of hair, and the care of hair has done, and as it is reflected to men and women around the world. And it's so personal and emotional. And there's such a transformative sort of aspect and character to hair that doesn't exist a lot in other parts of the beauty industry. So I don't know, I've always just kind of been fascinated by it, like hanging out with my mom at the hair salon, for example, and like listening to what women would talk about and sort of what happens at the hair salon, quote, behind closed doors and all these things. Like, it's just kind of fascinating as a sociological experiment to me. And so that's kind of, I think, how I was drawn into it. And then basically, when I went to undergraduate, I majored in something totally random that has nothing to do with, business. And when it came time for me to get a job and like pay my bills, and my mom and my dad were like, okay, we paid you so much to go to this Ivy League school. What are you going to do to get a job? Coming out of it, I was like, well, if I could just get a job working in the beauty industry, if it could pay me to do what I love to do, then, that would be amazing. So I started doing it from a corporate perspective, which is why I started at L'Oreal, and the rest is history.
Wow. You're so lucky that at least you kind of knew what you wanted to do. This girl here went the medical route initially. And then after working in the labs for so many years, I eventually decided to venture into like the business side of things. And lo and behold, I'm in the beauty space, which is interesting. But I admire the fact that you knew what you wanted a long time and you went for it. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, Nathan, you have sat in the offices with C-suite level executives. You've been a C-suite level executive yourself. So you do understand what happens with real clients and real hair. What were some of the things that you learned at the salon floor that many business beauty executives never fully understood or understand?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, what is important in this sort of equation is that you have to really touch hair to understand it. Because I think a lot of people in, boardrooms, fancy executives, they think about hair. They research on their computers about hair. They may talk to some people about hair, but they very rarely have touched people's hair other than their own, or maybe their spouses or their child's. Because it is kind of a weird thing to just go around like touching people's hair or asking your friends, like, let me touch your hair or whatever. But it's a very, very important process to understanding how to develop products for hair and how hair behaves. And when you are a stylist and all you are doing is touching people's hair for a living, touching their souls and their spirits as well, but touching their hair, you really, really feel what different hair types are, and you feel what happens when water touches the hair, or when a product touches that hair, or when you finish bleaching that hair, or color correcting that hair, or relaxing that hair, or permanenting that hair. You see what happens and you feel what happens firsthand to that hair texture, that curl pattern, that melanin structure or protein structure in the hair. You see and feel porosity. You see and feel hydrophobic and hydrophilic environments. You see and feel the interaction of oils and things in hair. And if you're just sitting in an ivory tower in a corporate boardroom thinking about hair, you're not actually understanding what it's doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like that's kind of important. Like, use your hands a little bit,
Yeah. You make a fantastic point. It's hard for you to create a solution for people if you're not actually experiencing what exactly it is you're trying to create a solution for.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we can extrapolate that, which is a whole different podcast, into the bigger worldview of people making decisions for people where they don't have lived experiences of.
Oh my goodness. It's like we can dive into so many different aspects of people's lives. You're so right. But yeah, that conversation cannot be contained in this episode.
Yes.
Maybe we need to come back and have that discussion. So now we've talked about your past and we're talking about your present, right? What motivated you to create Filament Sciences? And why is it important for brands like yours to exist at this time?
Okay, big question. So So Filament Sciences is an R&D company that manufactures a hair care brand called Filament. So we're a little bit different in the way that we're structured. And I wanted to do that on purpose because I wanted to make sure that everything we come out with, all the technology that we release, stems from scientific research, R&D, and we weren't thinking brand first. A lot of entrepreneurs, when they start their first business, they think, well, what's the logo going to look like? And what's the packaging going to look like? And oh my God, there's this beautiful oil I love so much, I want to replicate. And that's wonderful. But where we started was, what problem are we trying to solve?
Mm-hmm.
What can we research and develop? And then what is the best delivery mechanism? What is the best carrier for that scientific discovery? Is it a mask? Is it an oil? Is it a cleanser? So forth and so on. So we thought about things a little bit differently. Now, the sort of crayons and construction paper of why I started this business is like pretty simple and straightforward. I just wanted to hang out with hairstylists all day. I just wanted to basically be in a salon for as much as I could for my workday, because that's what's fun. And ultimately, I really wanted to create products and services that could help the hair community, the creator community, the hair artist community to earn a better living and earn an income by selling our products and selling our treatments, for example, to their clients. And I think in doing that, we've had a very clear North Star, which is just like, let's give the hairstylist something that's helpful for them. Let's give the client something that actually changes their hair or improves their quality of life. Everybody sort of wins. And we get DMs and emails all the time from hairstylists being like, oh my God, like selling filament and filament treatments has paid for my, child's education or my car payment, and stuff like that. So it's just like, that's kind of really what it's about, is more giving back to the artist community.
Oh my goodness. That is such a profound way to exist as a company. And I just have to say, like, I admire that about your organization. And importantly, I like the fact that you're thinking about the people that are involved in caring for people's hair, because we tend to focus more on like the customers, right? Quote unquote consumers, which I don't like using that word anymore. The customers, we tend to focus on them. But then also there are other people involved in actually caring for their hair too. So I admire that. And your website, it's giving vibes. It's
a vibe. It's definitely a vibe. It's like, if
it.
you know, thank you. But like also a lot of people don't get it, and I'm just like, well, maybe we're not for you, you'll come around, but yeah.
Yes. No, I mean, it's giving like yours. Very sciencey, science fiction, proof focused, evidence based. I love it.
Thank you.
Okay. So now let's talk about the word clean.
Yep.
It's everywhere now. We have clean beauty, clean hair care, clean ingredients, clean formulas. And listen, many consumers want safer products. And I understand why, especially when we think about the shock and devastation a lot of Black women have had to deal with from the whole relaxer controversy. It makes sense. But the word clean can also become a shortcut, as we've seen. It can make a product sound safe or gentle and effective before anyone has actually seen real proof. When a brand says a product is clean, what does that actually tell us? And what is it not telling us?
Okay, well, I guess I can be really straightforward on this podcast, right? Okay.
Do we encourage it?
Okay. Because I don't want to just like blow the lid off of a lot of like brands and things, whatever, because we can all, win and play together in this space. But
exactly.
When a brand says they're clean, it really doesn't mean much, honestly, if anything. The word clean has come about through popularity, and I appreciate it, but it implies that things that are not clean are therefore, I guess, dirty. Like, I don't know, what does it mean if you're not clean? And maybe it's just that. Maybe it's clean versus not clean, and that's the opposite of clean. But I think there was this like psychological impetus for people to have things that were pure and that were safe. To your point, I think you use that word safety. The problem I have is that just because something isn't labeled as clean doesn't mean that it's not safe or that it's not effective or that it may not be a better solution for that particular client or patient. than a clean solution. What the word clean does say are a couple of things. It says that the brand cares enough to research ingredients that have been maybe refined in a certain way, ingredients that may come from a certain source versus another source. So there may be an ethical sourcing story with it. There may be a manufacturing or a green story that comes with it. It says that maybe a brand cared a lot about the supply chain or the microfinancing of the community that farmed the vegetables that then was nano encapsulated into a clean ingredient. So it can say all of those things. But to use ingredients that are not deemed as clean doesn't mean that they're not perfectly fine, sourced ethically, manufactured responsibly, that they could work better, to be honest with you. And in fact, some ingredients that are not clean are actually cleaner than clean ingredients in terms of the value chain that they come from. Some ingredients that are considered clean actually may have a more deleterious value chain to the global economy or to the environment than ingredients that are not deemed clean based on the supply chain and how they were manufactured or farmed. So, for example, if you use CO2 extraction to get something from an oregano plant, like an oil that you use in a product, the process of that could actually be a lot worse for the ecosystem and the environment than a manufactured ingredient from a sugar molecule that is endlessly biodegradable and exists in a petri dish somewhere that didn't have an effect on any plants or animals that were farmed to create it. So it's a little arbitrary, I guess.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I feel like when people tend to hear things are made with natural ingredients, they tend to feel like it's safer, it's better. Of course, we recognize that our ancestors used these things years ago, like thousands of years ago. But that doesn't mean ingredients that we would consider more like naturally derived, right? A lot of synthetic ingredients are actually naturally derived. So they still come from natural sources. It doesn't mean that they're not effective. There are a good amount of them that are very effective, very safe, and they don't have the toxic or negative side effects that a lot of people usually assume they do. So yeah, Nathan, I think you highlight such an important point and why it's so crucial for people to be more informed about ingredient specificity.
Completely. And I'll give another example, which we may talk about later, around like sebum in your scalp, which is a big part of having textured hair and the protection of the rest of the hair follicle and so forth. You know, the sebum that is produced in your scalp is completely unique to human life forms. There is no other oil structure or fatty acid structure on this planet, even in other mammals that exist, that replicates sebum that is produced from your dermis in your scalp biome. So if you are looking to natural solutions that are untouched by science to try to replicate the sebum or oil that is already present in your hair and scalp, you will not find it. It is not possible. You can get sort of close to it by using like jojoba, for example, which would be structurally the most similar to the oil that exists, but it is still very far from it. And there are scientific derivations of oils that can be constructed in a lab, for example, that actually do mimic the structure of sebum in your hair and would scientifically be better for textured hair than their natural counterparts.
And I feel like when usually people think about ingredients that are problematic, they tend to lean towards preservatives, right? So the parabens, like the notorious ones. But I'm happy you're bringing this up because there is still that misconception when it comes to thinking about naturally derived or synthetic ingredients that people really need to start being more aware of. One thing that I wanted to even flag, right, based on what you said, is that as we're moving to the next set of questions, clean does not automatically mean something that is moisturizing. Something sounding natural does not automatically mean it's actually safe for every scalp. Gentle doesn't necessarily mean it's effective. And for textured hair doesn't automatically mean that it's actually tested on tightly coiled hair. You can have a product label as a conversation starter, but that should not be the end. So then I want us to move on to Afro-textured hair needs and specific testing. So Afro-textured hair, right? When we think about them, we think curly, coily, kinky, tightly curled. What else do they even call them these days? But those words cannot fully explain what is actually happening in the hair fiber, right? You have hair basically that the shape bends, it has density, there's shrinkage, dryness patterns, styling habits you have to think about, scalp concerns, and so on. So if a product is only tested on straight or loosely wavy hair, we cannot assume it will work the same on Afro-textured hair. Now, my question for you, Nathan, when you look back at your years in global beauty, what gap did you see in the way the industry treated Afro-textured hair?
Well, okay. So I think the most disappointing thing that I experienced is large companies are focused on migrating to the average or optimizing for the majority. They're not focused on optimizing for the outliers, because maybe there's not enough business case for it, or maybe there's just not enough people, addressable market, which is kind of the confluence of not having a business case for it. But the problem is, if you're constantly optimizing to the average in a scientific study or in product development, you're not actually studying the outliers in what could perform for them, and therefore push the average further and push the average higher. So statistically speaking, because textured hair is not within the average of the data set of the human population, they exist in the outlier set. And a lot of companies don't believe that studying the outlier set is worth their time, is worth their money. And a lot of companies don't believe that studying the outlier set could actually give them insights into how to make the average better, like I was saying, or the center of the data set better and push it further. In my opinion, if you study the outliers and why they're outliers, and if you study reasons why something might work in an outlier population, you end up actually pushing the evolution of the rest of the population. And this is kind of interesting when you think about textured hair, because, and why we did clinical trials on textured hair and all curl patterns, is because if a product can work in a textured hair environment, it is definitely going to work on that girly that is a straight or type 2 wave.
Yes.
So why are you not going to the Olympics of hair?
Oh my God, say that again. Why are you not going to the what?
Why are you not going to the Olympics of hair and testing on for curl type? Like,
that is awesome.
What are you doing? Because if it works for that curl type and that population, it will work for type 1 and type 2 hair. And the other thing to think about is that, like, there's two other X factors in hair testing that are important. One of them is melanin structure. So a lot of people maybe don't really realize, I'm sure your audience understands this in spades, but like melanin is a really big part of the equation in what comprises hair. It's the same in skin. So you have two types of melanin in your hair. And depending on how much of that melanin in your hair, obviously, is how dark or how light your hair is. That melanin has a structure. And actually, those two different types of melanin have their own structure. They lend structure to a hair, and they lend structure to the keratin and protein fibers in the hair as well. So you have a melanin equation, which generally in type 4 hair is attached to darker melanin type, like Fitzpatrick type 4, 5, 6 skin types. And then therefore,
what is this, please? So we're kind of sciencey, but not completely sciencey.
Sorry.
So like speak plain English to us here, because we know melanin, but not to this level.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm an esthetician, so we speak in Fitzpatrick types. Okay. So the Fitzpatrick scale it's a scale. You can Google it, whatever. It's a dude who had a last name Fitzpatrick that created it. And there are 6 types. There are 6 skin types, basically. And Fitzpatrick type 1 is going to be your ultra fair skin type. So burns really easily, probably the least amount of melanin present in the skin, for example. And then your higher Fitzpatrick types are going to move away from probably what would be identified as Caucasian skin and into more melanated Latina skin, and to Afro-Latina, Afro skin type of darker, deeper skin tones, right? So even though our makeup now has 65 shades to it, as it should, the skin scale is divided into Fitzpatrick types.
Okay. That's actually helpful to know.
Yeah.
I'm learning something here.
Yeah. So I could go on that forever. But the point is that there is a difference in melanin load in your hair, just like there is a difference in, your skin might be more melanated than my skin, for example. But there's also a difference in the shape of the hair as a cross section.
Yes.
Right. So some hair is flatter or more elliptical or round based on how curly it is. And that has a lot to do with the structure.
So basically, when it comes to product development, the average is the focus, especially in the US, and I think a lot of Western countries. However, it's important to actually go towards the outliers, especially when it comes to curlier hair. Because if you can develop something that works for the Olympics of hair, guess what? People with straighter hair would actually really benefit because it would work for them. So it's usually a win-win for companies when you're thinking about developing products. And we're saying this to bigger companies. Guys, pay attention.
I know.
Pay attention. Yeah. No, that's really wonderful. But seriously, you need to do a deep dive on melanin. Maybe we need to bring you back here to talk about it.
We should. That would be fun.
So the other thing that I was going to ask you is that when it comes to product development, right, people creating hair products for different hair types, like when they're thinking about coming up with a shampoo, a conditioner, a leave-in, an oil, a treatment, or like a styling product that they're looking to test, what should researchers observe or measure for textured hair?
Well, I guess it would depend on what problem, you're trying to solve in terms of the product, I guess the product solution set. So like I'll take, for example, our brand Filament. The first and currently only product that we offer is a strengthening treatment. And so I was very clear that I wanted to solve for creating stronger hair that had less breakage, reconstruction of things like disulfide bonds and hydrogen bonds and keratin chains within the actual, fiber. So for us, when it was, important to think about how we're strengthening the hair, we really need to do certain laboratory tests that utilize advanced machinery and equipment to test the strength of the hair. What are we looking for? What does degradation of strength mean? And how can we actually test it quantitatively? If you are developing a product that wants to increase, for example, slip on the hair so that there's less mechanical damage from combing through the textured curls, then obviously there's other machinery and equipment in a lab that you can test for quantitative measure. The problem is that most hair care brands, particularly smaller businesses, don't have the budget to do significant clinical research because it is very expensive.
Yeah.
Right. And the other problem is most brands don't test their raw materials, and they also don't test the finished product in clinicals, because that's what gets really, really expensive. So they are doing what's called extrapolated claims. So they're buying a chemical from a manufacturer. That manufacturer is claiming it can do X.
Yes.
And And they're saying, I'm going to borrow that claim. So in layman's terms, it's like, I have coffee and I want it to be sweeter. If I add sugar to it, I know that sugar sweetens things.
Yeah.
So now I can make the claim because I've added sugar and therefore my coffee is sweeter.
Yes. No, I think you're so right. Because for me, as a hair care brand owner, when it comes to trying to do tests, it is mad expensive. It is not cheap at all. And I think that's part of, for a lot of smaller businesses, some of the things that you really have to sit down and try to prioritize. And in those cases, I would say my own example, I've had to basically just have people try out the products and we have to wait out and see and observe how the hair is basically improving. And we do see it, but I agree. I think it's important for us to actually have access to, should I say, tests that are more affordable. So that way we can provide people with, more information, essentially, especially when we are in a space whereby people actually they want to be more informed and have more clarity about what products are actually doing to their hair. So you do make a good point. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I was also going to ask you, you've been in the beauty industry for a very, very long time, and I'm sure you've seen your own share of product controversies. Can you share what can go wrong when brands make claims for textured hair without testing on the hair types they're actually selling to?
Well, oh my God. Yeah, I have seen a number of controversies. And I left the beauty industry for 3 years because I was just tired of it, because I was like, I don't have anything new to say. There's a lot of, you know, snake oil that's out there and shaman science and people making claims and influencers making claims that are just absolutely ridiculous. And I felt like I just don't want to be a part of this anymore. Like something that raised me is not necessarily something that defines me anymore. So, fun fact, I did jump out of it for that reason, because unfortunately there's all too much, I guess, conspiracy out there. I think the thing is, people, just as brands have gotten very good at marketing, consumers have gotten very smart at smelling the BS in what brands are trying to say.
From 1,000 miles away.
Right? Exactly. Like, you can tell the level of authenticity. And I was on another podcast the other day talking about why so many brands are obsessed with trying to ingratiate themselves to the hairstylist and professional community. And it's really such a territory grab, because brands are now like smart and realizing, well, if I just get a hairstylist to say that this thing works, then people will believe it, because they know that they've lost their goodwill with consumers and what they're doing and saying is not legitimate. So, I don't know that I can point to like one specific controversy that I feel like has kind of upset me, just because I also try not to focus on like blowing people up or like, making sort of negative assumptions. There was the very famous makeup controversy, of course, which is outside of hair, that happened, which we all know. And then that was a series of, terrible things that happened, and how it was managed was even worse. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like the world sort of takes care of itself sometimes. The consumer zeitgeist takes care of itself. A brand may work for a little bit of time and convince a couple of people that it can do what it says it's going to do, but consumers will always catch on and good will always prevail.
Yes, I just remember the saying, you can fool some people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all of the time. You can't.
Exactly.
My goodness.
Exactly.
So, as someone who is serving a community with very specific hair needs and a long history of being overlooked by the beauty industry, how would you make sure your work is guided by listening and real collaboration?
Yeah. Okay. So I have an example of this because, I know it appears like it sounds like I know a lot about hair science, which I do functionally know a lot, but there's a lot of things that I don't know. And I'm always the first person to recognize what I don't know and lean into people that work with me and around me to sort of like learn more about that. And I'll give an example. Like I do hair color. I'm not a stylist or a groomer, meaning I don't cut hair. I'm not good at cutting hair. I do skin. I do certain skin services. I do really insane chemical skin resurfacing. But there's other skin services I don't do or won't do because I'm not very good at it. When I do hair, I work on curly hair, but I don't specialize in Afro-Textured 4A through C curl types all the time. And it's interesting because when I was preparing for coming on here today, I immediately called one of my very dear confidants. Her name is Suzette Boozer. And you might have heard of her or whatever, because she's a very famous hairstylist, particularly in the Afro and textured hair community. And I called her and I was like, girl, I'm going on this podcast. Like, I'm so excited to talk about this, and this, but she is what I call, she's like the queen of Black Hollywood. I mean, she works on anyone and everyone that you could even dream or think of in all hair types and textures, mainly focused on melanated skin and melanated hair. And she does this all day long. She also happens to be the head of the Hollywood Hair Union, the whole sort of trade union. And she's been doing this for decades. And she's so, so smart. She's such a genius and such an icon, and knows so much about product and science as it relates to the larger textured hair community. And I immediately called her on the phone this morning and I was like, talk to me. Like, this is what I know. This is what I don't know. Like, you know, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? You know, and to be able to call on people like that, and to be able to call on confidence in people you trust like that, that are true subject matter experts, I think is like really, really critical. And when I'm developing products, you know, having people like her involved in testing them and giving me feedback, and she'll tell it to me straight, you know, hey, maybe this is terrible, or you know what, this is what you should think about, or this is what you should do. Having that is so, so important. And I don't think that enough people have lifelines like that are really ingrained and steeped in the community.
No, I think that is amazing. And I love that. I love the fact that you are talking to the people that are within, like you're talking to people that are living it, the people that have that hair type, the people that care for that hair type, because they will tell you as it is. They will tell you whether or not some of these things work. If you are proposing something that you feel like it sounds amazing on paper, but then the reality might be different, that's really admirable. It is. So I've noticed something. When we talk about clinical proof, right? In plain language, a lot of people think, okay, is this something that is medical? Is this something that's complicated? But at its best, clinical proof just simply means a brand made a claim, it tested that claim properly, and can show evidence. It's not vibes. It's just evidence.
Right.
So when a brand says a product is clinically tested, what should that mean?
Okay. So I'm going to answer from my perspective, obviously, because you're asking me, and I feel like everyone else can have a different lived experience or a POV. But as a brand that clinically tests their products, you need to have quantitative and qualitative testing. There needs to be a statistically significant data set, which is different in qual versus quant. You need to have advanced equipment to be able to test something, which means not consumer perception testing. That a consumer perception test can be both qualitative and quantitative, but that's why I'm listing the things I personally believe you must have in order to meet clinical claims. There must be some level of advanced equipment and machinery that is able to test something physically. And there must be somebody of, I would say, somebody of excellence. You know what? I'll leave it a bigger term. It doesn't need to be an MD, PhD from Harvard, for example, but you need to have somebody of excellence that really has authority and career basis to know what they're doing, to validate those claims, to validate those tests, and to publish findings on it. That can be a trichologist.
Mm.
That can be a hairstylist that has been working in the industry for 40 years. And no matter what medical degree you have, baby, that hairstylist knows just as much about hair. Trust me. Okay.
Yes.
That can be a chemical formulator. That can be a nurse practitioner, somebody that has a level of clinical credibility needs to be validating that, reviewing it, and so forth. And so that, in my opinion, is what a clinical claim or a clinical process looks like.
Yeah, I think that is actually very valuable insight that you bring up. And we need to lean towards a world whereby brands are actually being more honest about what they tested and what they didn't actually test, essentially. So now, let's talk about trust. You have a lot of Black people, and we're actually winding down on our conversation because, yes, we had way more questions, but you know what, guys? I think I need to bring Nathan back here.
I would love that. I know. I looked at our questions. I'm like, oh my God, we have another hour to do, but we both have to end soon, I think.
Okay, it's okay. No, but I'm loving this conversation because I'm also learning, which I think is profound, honestly. So yes, you have a lot of Black people. And I'll say this from our own experience. We've become our own researchers. We read ingredients lists. We watch reviews like a hawk. We ask friends. We test products one section of hair at a time. We keep mental notes, right? This conditioner was killed on day 3, or this oil made my scalp itch, and then this leave-in said moisture, but my hair actually said for where? Where is the moisture? So, and there's a humor in all of this, but it can also feel very, very, very exhausting. So to kind of close with my final question for you, what would you like the beauty industry to do differently so Black customers can trust hair care claims without having to become special investigators?
I think it just comes down to visual proof a lot. Like, show people how you're testing something, or show people the actual hair that you tested it on, the swatches, the strands, the humans. Show people a little bit behind the mask, let people into the process and the transparency of how these things are being tested and the types of hair they're being tested on. Because I think that will just allow for a little more grace on behalf of the general population that's buying these products. I think speaking as a CEO and from a company perspective, I will say that a lot of consumers are really tough on us, and rightfully so. And I think people need to be, raising their standards of what companies owe people in terms of information. But I think a little bit goes a long way. If a brand is able to say, this is how we did something, this is who we tested it on. You know what? It may not be everybody. It may not be every curl type. Your skin may look different than this, or your hair may look slightly different than this, but this is what we tested on.
Yeah.
And this is how it performed. And we hope that it performs the same on your hair. But we also know that two sisters who come from the same bloodline that use the same product have two very different lived experiences and two very different outcomes for how that product works on their hair.
Great.
So you can't just say that, look, I tested this all on, 4B hair type, and so therefore it's going to work on all 4B hair type. It doesn't work like that. There's got to be a give and take both sides.
Yeah, there are different factors you have to think about. Porosity, right? It sounds very simple, but depending on other factors, your hair might react differently compared to somebody's hair who actually looks very much like yours. So it's not that straightforward. And I'm really glad that you flagged that. I feel like, yes, we need to have more transparency. And Nathan, I have to say, this has been such a necessary conversation. I believe the message is clear. Afro-textured hair does not need louder claims. It does need better proof. Absolutely. We need Afro-textured hair to have brands that actually test carefully, researchers who include our hair from the beginning. We need product development that respect our real lives. And we also need language that actually tells the truth. And it needs, Afro-Textured hair needs an industry that understands that culture and science are not opposites. So Nathan, oh my God, I don't want you to go, but you know what?
Bring me back.
Before we go, where can our listeners learn more about Filament Sciences and your work?
Okay, so our Instagram handle is Filament Sciences, as is our TikTok. Our website is filamentsciences.com. The brand is called Filament. I have a CEO account on Instagram if you want to follow my shenanigans as a CEO, which is called Nathan in the Lab. And I hope to see you guys soon. DM me with any questions you have.
I am bringing you back, definitely. And thank you so much for joining us. So, guys, have you tried any hair products that did what it promised? What was your experience with clinically or lab-tested products? Are there clinically or lab-tested products on your radar? Anything coming to mind? Let us know. Send an email to our new email address, guys. We got an upgrade. It is hello@unravelingtheknots.com, or simply DM us at UTK Podcast. One more thing. We'd really appreciate your rating wherever you get your podcast, and continue to share this with your people. Thank you very much. I still remain Ganiat, and it's been my pleasure hosting this episode of Unraveling the Knots. Do take care.